It's such an interesting topic, and you could force me into presenting an argument for either side, specialization or not. I'll start with the argument against specialization because I feel like that would be my view with my own child, is that um, let's just step back and look at the machine of sports development and what's valued now, because it starts at the very top and trickles its way all the way down to 6-year-old development, because parents are watching professional sports, seeing what's valued. What's weird is that by the time their kid is 13 years older and ready for professional contention, what will be valued will very likely swing back in the other direction. It's a pendulum, and it works from in pitching from velocity to sustainability, back to velocity to movement. There are a lot of things that are being valued at different areas as, data starts to become more and more refined, and we figured out what actually gets players out or hitters out quickly. Um, but what's valued now in professional sports, being velocity, for instance, in pitching, is going to have its effect on the need to specialize. So, in other words, like if I'm going to be able to throw 100 miles an hour when I'm 23 years old, I have no option but to throw way too much to develop that level of skill. So, essentially, the skill level ends up writing checks that the physical development just can't cash. We've got kids that are, throwing high 90s at 16 and 17 years old, when James Andrews did a study not so long ago, probably a decade ago, just looking at tensile force, I guess, tolerance for the ulnar collateral ligament in the throwing arm. And basically, for an 18-year-old, at 90 miles per hour of throwing velocity, which means 8,500 degrees of humeral spin, it's the fastest movement in humankind. At 90 miles per hour, an 18-year-old's UCL was redlining. Basically, it was a crapshoot as to whether or not he was going to tear his UCL. And this was across the board. So if you are throwing more than 90 miles per hour at an average ligamentous maturity of 18 years, you really are, it's roulette. You may or may not blow out your UCL, and there's really no formula to accurately predict that. So that just tells you that if I'm going to get to 100 miles an hour by the time I'm in professional contention, the last time being 21, 22, and 23 years old coming out of college, I've got to be throwing a certain speed by a certain age to get there. You don't just get 10 mile per hour increment jumps. So to throw 100 plus at age 21, 22, or 23, I probably have to be throwing at a minimum 90 miles per hour at age 18. And we've already seen the studies that anatomically I can't withstand that amount of tensile stress on my UCL consistently at age 18. Ligamentous maturity doesn't happen until age 21 in most athletes. So um, the argument for specialization is that I've got to overthrow to get good enough at throwing hard enough soon enough to get to the big leagues. The argument against it is quite simple. You can't throw too much soon enough, hard enough to get to the big leagues and not get hurt. So truly, when you look at those two sides of the equation, the only pitcher that can get there is a pitcher who throws too much, but was designed at birth to be really tolerant to high level ligamentous stress, and also has a very special nervous system that can adapt to that much skill work. And actually, they become better and better and better at throwing hard. So it's a really complex, but then again, simple formula. But you can argue in either direction. I mean, a healthy kid that's throwing 80 miles an hour because he did things the right way is not getting to the big leagues. A kid that's thrown too much and now throws 100 miles per hour but gets hurt also is probably not getting to the big leagues. One surgery from the moment that you get drafted into the major leagues, between the time you get drafted and between the time you make your debut, reduces your chances of you ever making your major league debut by 50%. A single surgery. So that tells you what you need to know about injury prevention and its importance for getting to the big leagues. But if you got injured, guess what? You probably did the amount of throwing that was required to be able to throw 100 miles an hour. So we're really kind of in between this rock and hard place. And I would argue the best predictor of success in getting to that level has nothing to do with your training regimen. Of course, your training regimen matters, but it has much more to do with how God made you and your genetic makeup, your tolerance for stress ligamentously, and your ability to acquire skill. Basically, who were your parents?